So I have a question. I've been studying the beast and the image of the beast. In Revelation 11, it talks about how God has two witnesses, and God's two witnesses are killed, and then God's two witnesses are resurrected.
Right.
And in our kingdom dynamics, you have the God, the Father, the deity on the throne, and then you have Christ as the king as one witness, and then the Elijah messenger in the priestly position is the second witness.
That's right.
Now, Satan's counterfeit of that is the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. Well, one of Satan's two witnesses has been killed and is resurrected, but I've been studying this idea. Well, if the image of the beast, which is the priestly position, the false prophet, really is a reflection of the first beast, and it's also a counterfeit of Christ's two witnesses, shouldn't the we expect the image of the beast to also seem to receive a mortal wound and have that wound be healed?
Yes.
A death and
And
resurrection
it
experience
does.
for America. That America, as we used to know it, as it was founded with two horns like a lamb, is going to be killed, and it's going to be resurrected as a different beast, the image of the beast that's going to come back to life. It's given
Well,
life.
and yes, so you can start there, but you really the first, of course we know that Protestantism was the beast from the earth.
Yes,
Catholicism is the beast from the sea. So
yes.
Protestantism has already received a deadly wound, and what we're seeing in terms of the resurgence of what we call the mark of the beast, dominionism, and what's going on in America is actually the
Mm,
healing of a wound that Protestantism, as you saw, Christianity throughout the United States lost. Their churches were empty; they're all dead,
mm,
right? Atheism, the king of the south took over, right? So when the
mm,
king of the north is in charge, then the king of the south receives a deadly wound. Then the king of the south heals, and then the king of the north receives a deadly wound. So that it's the same. It's so that when the pendulum swings, one is receiving the deadly wound, and the other one is seemingly having this resurrection experience. And so
mm,
in the Dark Ages, the Protestant Reformation went strong, and then all of a sudden, the Protestantism in America. By the way, there was really no Protestantism anywhere else around the world except America.
mm,
Um, and then and then you see, obviously, with the King of the South, the Protestantism has no power; it's dead. It's a, and that's the same thing you talk about Revelation 11. But in Revelation 13, that power comes back to life and actually forms an image. But the
mm,
other the other part that's neat is that it forms the image. So if it forms the image, then it itself is not the image. So what happens is that the bride of the dragon, just like the bride of Christ takes on flesh, the same thing happens with the forming of the image of the beast, that it causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, to worship the beast, and it forms the image of the beast. The image of the beast, therefore, becomes the people itself. So that becomes the image of the beast. So it's the image of the beast. It's not the beast himself. Does that make
mm.
sense? So there's more to this than we have seen. Instead of just the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. It's not just Satan and Catholicism and the Protestantism. It's what happens. What the goal is to form the people, the multitudes, the masses into the bride of Satan to reflect his image. Just like God's purpose, God's goal is to form the masses, the great multitude, into his bride. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that the Elijah messenger, even when we talk about the 144,000 are the virgins that attend the wedding. Well, then who's the bride? Well, the bride is the great multitude that God is trying to save. They become his bride. And so the roles switch as the controversy goes forward. The pattern remains the same, but the roles switch. Does
Mm.
that make sense? Am I making sense?
Like at a fractal level.
Yes. So death and resurrection happens or the wound, and then the healing of the wound happens to every part of it. Happens to the dragon, it happens to the beast, it happens to the false prophet, it also happens to the bride of Satan, that they they have the same experience. It's a similar pattern. And so you can see this three, yea, four parts in Revelation 13. The same
Hmm.
thing you see in Revelation 14, this three, yea, four parts. Does that make sense, or am I confusing you?
Yes, because if he could, he could fool the very elect. So yes.
Right. So that they're both trying to establish the kingdom, but the kingdom is described by this bride. Now, in God's kingdom, that bride is described as a virgin, but in Satan's kingdom, that it's described as a harlot. But the
Yeah.
harlot is not always necessarily just the Catholic Church. That the
Yeah.
harlot, his bride, at the end is all who, when, for example, Revelation 18, when at the end of 17, when the kings of the earth hate the harlot, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. And then it talks about the merchants of the earth and the kings of the earth. Well, then it goes back to the king of the south, but there's still a bride. They're still trying to form the masses of this world, the people of this world, into an image of the beast to resist the coming of the king and his army. So the armies of this world are that are arrayed against the armies of Christ in Revelation 19.
Yeah, there seems to be this decline in Protestantism, but yet there was something I was looking at where it talked about there's this big resurgence of people flocking to Catholicism.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because in 1798, when there was a deadly wound, and then we know in 1843, 1844, there was Babylon had fallen. Well, the deadly wound happened to the Catholic Church, but the fall of Babylon happened to Protestantism. So it was
Yes.
it wasn't just a deadly wound for one, it was a deadly wound for the other as well. And Protestantism really lost all of its power to influence society. And then it went through, you saw this period of Adventism growing, but you saw also the Protestant churches declining. And then of course at the turn of the century, 19th century, you see religion keep going, losing authority and losing influence, and secular humanism gaining and gaining. So now you're seeing the switch, the pendulum swinging is starting to go the other way.
One of the things I noticed a few years ago at this point when I was studying the passage was in Revelation 13, it talks, in verse 11, you've got the beast comes up out of the earth. It has two horns like a lamb. It speaks like a dragon. He exercises all the power of the first beast before him, clearly speaking about the papal beast, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed, again, referring back to the first beast in the beginning of the chapter. But then in verse 13, it says, he doeth great wonders, so that he make fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And you see in verse 14 that the purpose of the fire coming down from heaven is to deceive men that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Now, I think most people, when they read that end of verse 14, they think it's pointing back to the first beast again, but I don't think it is. Because
No,
when it says which had the wound, if you look in the original Greek, the word had, the verb had is in the present tense. It's not past tense. It has
right,
a wound by the sword, and it's not referring to it's not referring to the beast which had a wound. It's talking about the image of the beast has a wound by the sword and yet lives.
right,
And that's why in verse 15, then they have to give power to give life to the image of the beast, because the image of the beast has been killed and is brought back to life.
right.
It
That's
has
right.
a death and resurrection experience because it's a second
That's right.
witness.
That's right. So, and by the way, again, the idea that the wound was healed is not, again, it's not talking about the past. It's actually present. It's always present tense.
Yes, it's present tense.
So it's not referring to 538 to 1798.
No.
It's not
Yeah.
referring to 17 when the wound was given in 1798. It's healed.
Yes.
The wound is healed.
Present
Yeah, you
truth.
see that in verse 12. It's already healed. So
Right. And so
it's
the
something
idea
else in
here
verse
is just
14.
as you've already seen, just as Christ received a deadly wound and was healed, so his followers, his bride, the priest, the 12, whichever one however you want to use the Elijah witness has a deadly wound, and that deadly wound is healed. That's what
Yes.
Revelation 11 is telling us, right?
Yes.
That they died, and then there's resurrection. So
Yes.
it's the same. So this is the same thing going on in Revelation 13, Satan's kingdom that's being described by God and God's kingdom, Revelation 11, and also Revelation 14.
Hmm.
So it's a parallel, and the image of the beast is not the beast itself, it's the image of the beast.
Yes. Yes. The image of the beast is the object, not just the beast.
Right.
Yes.
So for example, in Daniel chapter 3, when all the people were brought to the plain of Dura to bow down to the golden image, well, when down, they don't become the golden image. They're the reflection of the statue, but they're not the statue.
Hmm.
Right? But they
Yes.
reflect the statue because they're bowing down to it. So they
Yes.
become the image of the kingdom. They literally become the bride, the glory of that kingdom. That's what's happening here.
By beholding, they're changed.
Right. And by submitting, by bowing down, then they become a reflection of that which they worship.
Yes.
And that's how he gives life to the image of the beast.
Hmm.
So this is the first beast. The first beast out of the sea is all anti-Michael language. Who is like the beast? That's the name for Michael. If you look at the first beast, it's all anti-Michael, a replacement of Christ beast. When you look at this beast comes out of the earth, this is anti-Elijah beast.
Yes.
This is all the opposite of Elijah or John the Baptist beast.
Yes.
Okay. But the image is the people itself that worship,
Yes.
and they come to reflect
Yes.
whatever they worship.
Yeah. In the days of Elijah prayed and the fire came down from heaven. And who was killed immediately after? The false prophets.
That's right.
The false prophets killed by the fire coming down from heaven.
That's right. And Revelation 13 takes that story and turns it around and says the false prophet. Now this time the false prophet's going to call down fire from heaven, and guess who's going to lose his head? The true prophet. So the story is turned. It's the same story, but it's turned. Now the false prophet calls down fire from heaven, and then God's prophet's going to be killed. That's the Elijah prophet, by Elijah witness, by the way. We talked about in Revelation 13, verses 9 and 10. We talked about that. Was that last week? We talked about that.
Yeah.
That was a reference to John the Baptist and Elijah. So so the same pattern is going to happen, only now it seems like it's upside down. The fire coming down from heaven is actually coming down from proving to be a deception. Instead of proving that who's the true God, it's actually proving who's the false God. Yeah, so there's a depth here in Revelation 13 that we just see. The blinder is that we keep reading Revelation 13 as if it's talking about 538 to 1798, rather than seeing 538 to 1798 as a pattern that is going to be replicated.
Exactly.
We read it as if that's all it's talking about. And so we read through it. Oh yeah, the papacy, that dark ages, yep, okay. And then the beast from and then
we know that. Next page.
Yeah, right. That's right. We go on. And then, but it's not written in the past. It's written in the future. It's written in terms of the time of the healing when the wound is healed.